All right, welcome to the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro Community User Group. For our first one this year, apologies for February. I'd like to just excuse myself for that being Lunar New Year and the fact that we probably weren't organised enough for that month. So, got a lot to catch up on. So I'm Andrew O. as you have not picked up from the slide here. Usually I'm joined with Brett Moffat and Matt Klein, who are my co-hosts. I'm sure they'll jump in at some point during the presentation to join us. A bit of housekeeping. So I acknowledge the original custodians of the land, the Ghana people and their relationship with the country. And we also pay respect to the authorities of the Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. So being that we haven't met since November, there's a lot of stuff that's happened. I've tried to cull down the fantastic news to a very curated list. So first up, I want to touch on Microsoft Defender for Business. So this is currently in preview for customers and partners of Microsoft alike. Essentially what it is, it's Defender for Endpoint, but it will be included within your Microsoft 365 Business Premium licensing. So you're going to see a lot of the familiar things like threat vulnerability management, endpoint detection and response, and of course the Defender and antivirus agents on your machine. It's a quick comparison. So it is almost on par with the Plan 2 for Defender for Endpoint. You do get this simplified client configuration, so you're onboarding all your devices in the one pane of glass, and you can see everything from within the security admin center. So you're not jumping between Defender for Endpoint, Intune. It's just all in one place. You do not get the advanced hunting and threat experts from Microsoft's end, but you're getting a lot more for your business premium licensing. It sounds like potentially from May onwards, this will go in general availability, but don't take my word for it. That was just a insider rumor, so we'll see how that goes. Just brought to my attention the other day, there's a maturity model for Microsoft 365 logo. So this is put together by a bunch of MVPs and community leads. Essentially, it's a way to gauge where you are with what you're using so far in Microsoft 365, where your shortfalls are, what you could be doing. And this essentially, it's a framework for building up on your holistic use of Microsoft 365. While we're talking about that kind of thing, 5 years ago, the SharePoint framework was generally released. If you're not familiar with this is essentially what SharePoint developers are now using to create new web parts and content, the like. Previously in classic SharePoint, you had a lot more control over what you were developing, but now in the modern SharePoint space, you're limited to using this framework here. So it's been an interesting journey. A lot of teams and Viva connections now coming up, all based on this framework. While we're still in that SharePoint space, Microsoft Lists, they've now got a board view, so you can do your Kanban or tasks list within a list in SharePoint or Teams. What does it mean for Planner and the like? It's another option, does similar things. It's not like for like. We don't know whether they're going to kill off Planner or anything in the near future, but it's more toys to play with. This is following them introducing the calendar view as well in the modern list. So if you're used to using event calendars in Classic, you get something similar. It's not quite the same, but it still looks better than the old one, at least. Microsoft Loop, I'm sure everyone's heard about this at least a little bit since the last Ignite. You may have noticed this funny looking square with circles in Teams. That's now updated to the actual Loop logo. So if you look there next to the smiley face for the emojis, there's a funky D looking thing. So that's the Loop icon. So you can access that within your Teams one-to-one chats, group chats. Don't know if it's there yet for channels, but it could be. So this will give you access to those fluid components that are stored within your OneDrive, and you can collaborate with people who are in that chat, or you've shared that Loop file. On top of that, there is a Loop user group. You can find them on LinkedIn. It's run by Darryl Webster, who's an MVP in New Zealand. Just let that person in. So if you're interested about Loop, sign up or join the user group and check out when they got the next presentations. They do cater for US and APAC time, so be sure to get onto the right one. Okay, in the exam space, so we've got some new exams and some exams coming out of beta and going live. First off the list is the AZ305, which is the Designing Azure Infrastructure Solutions. This is part of the prerequisites for the Azure Solutions Architect Expert certification. What they're doing, they're retiring the 303 and the 304, so you get the options of doing either 104 plus 305, 303, 304 before they retire, or 303 and 305 before 303 retires. So you need different combinations, but you may as well just wait or just do 104 and 305. There's a really good resource, Mr. John Saville. He's got some study guides, study crams even as well, and whiteboards. He covers a lot of content, and it's definitely worth looking at his playlist on YouTube if you're studying for an Azure exam. I'll put all these links in the chat after the session, the section of the presentation anyway. The AZ800 and 801, they went live, I believe, last Friday or Thursday. And these are the Windows Server and hybrid services exams. So you get your hybrid server admin associate certification. I had the fun of doing those one day apart while I was doing beta. So there was a lot of server and Hyper-V learning to be done there. So as long as you're all across that, because they hadn't had an exam on the server space since 2016. So it's jumping to 2019 and 2022 and into Azure. So it's a lot to take in if you haven't done one since then. The Data Analyst, or DA100, is now the PL300. So PL being Power Platform, which means we now have a Power BI exam. But it's still the Data Analyst Associate certification. So if you want to be certified in Power BI, now you've got an actual exam that says you know your stuff. Important dates. Just check the attendee list here. No, that's all right now. I was going to do a shout out if one of the Power BI user group hosts were in here, but there is a Power BI Summit next week. They've announced it on their meetup group, which I believe is the Adelaide Power BI user group. If you're interested, that's the link there. I'll put it in the chat afterwards. So it's all things Power BI. We're currently on Tuesday now, so this has already started, but this week is part of the business apps for partners. So they're running training, how-tos, and all those courses for your Power Platform and your Dynamics exams. Or you won't get any free exams out of it, but you will get the daily sessions with people presenting from locally and overseas. At the same time, we've also got the Modern Work and Security Skills Bootcamp this week. So security, compliance, identity. You do get a chance to attend and get a voucher for the SC900, so your fundamentals exam in that space. And there's also a bunch of videos with getting modern workplace things in gear. So there was one on Microsoft Surface yesterday, a bunch more on just using Teams and Teams Voice, and then how to integrate the security into that. So you've got your new toys in M365. This is how you're going to secure them. Things, for example, like MFA, zero trust approaches. So worth looking into. More learning resources, because I love throwing this at you every month. They've extended the 30 days to learn it challenge. So it's the learning path in one of the either Azure Development or Power Platform exams. So you do the learning path and they give you 50% off voucher at the end to use towards that exam. It's also Microsoft Virtual Training Days, so same thing with the fundamentals for the security thing. There is the Azure fundamentals, Power Platform, more Azure and AI and data. So keep an eye out. There's always different, I guess, areas of those topics there for training in those days. Changes to the exam or certification renewals. So they're going to be an annual thing from now on. So if you do pass one of those exams, you got to do a renewal in about 6 months because they last for 12 months, but you can do a renewal 6 months out. It's a free activity, but it is, you do still go into Microsoft Learn. There are curated learning paths to brush up your skills and any changes in the last 6 months. And it's roughly 20 something questions to go through. And if you pass that in one go, good for you. But if you don't, you can keep trying every day, once a day until you get it, so long as you do it before the original expiry date. And the certification poster, that's updated almost every week or month. So you can now see all these new exam numbers I've just mentioned and any prerequisite exams to take beforehand. I'm doing all right for time there. Next meetup, I will update that in the socials afterwards once we determine the order of things. I'll also put in a link for a form if you want to be a presenter or you want to contribute something within one of these sessions. Just fill out the form with your details and what you like to do and when you're available. All right, so for this month, we're doing something on Power Platform. So we've got, I guess, Mike Redden here. Just want to quickly throw to this little beauty here. I love it each time. Every time I see it, I like it even more. So essentially, we've stolen Burke's Backyard's cover photo here, and we've swapped it out with Mike, and you've got your Power Platform icons in the mix. It's also a little Microsoft icon to replace the Channel 9 logo. So it's like a waffle menu in the wrong spot. Shout out to Jeff Malone. He actually created this for me, and just do a shameless plug for him. Jeff was the most viewed fitness and health streamer back in November last year. So if you want to get some corporate wellness, some physical challenges out of the way, tune into his streams every morning and get to it. So start handing it over to Mike now. So if you want to just take control, I think I'll stop sharing my slides first. I think you've already taken control.
I tried to, and then it disappeared. Let's give that another crack and see if it works. There we go. Give us a thumbs up when it's looking good on your end. Excellent, fantastic, seeing some thumbs up. Thank you very much, Andrew. Now, I think there's a lot of new faces here. There are a few familiar people here, but I like being interrupted during my presentations. It's a little bit odd. If you've got any questions, feel free to put your hand up. Feel free to post a comment inside the chat. Feel free to just unmute yourself and start talking if you can get a word in between mine. Good luck. Otherwise, I'm more than happy for this to be an open conversation. I like working through ideas, and obviously I'm not going to have all of the answers for everything here. We're at a collection of IT pros here, and I think we can earn and generate a lot of good information just out of that conversation as well. But I will start the conversation. So what we're looking at here is cultivating a thriving Power Platform, which is Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. Now, the reason I picked this particular metaphor, and I will be stretching this metaphor, believe me, is a Power Platform environment. A typical organizational Power Platform seems to be a lot more organic than it is structured. You've obviously got your development platforms, your pure development platforms, and even your software as a service components that are very structured, very kind of managed as far as their rollout is concerned. But if anyone has worked with SharePoint for a long period of time, the Power Platform can be a little bit like that as well, where generally speaking, the default level of access that a lot of people have is huge. They can do a lot of stuff with that. And because of that, we have this organic growth, this natural expansion, and it requires cultivation. If you don't cultivate it, it's going to become a bit of a mess. So to start with, and I promise you I'm not talking about any one particular organization here. This is a story I've heard from a lot of different organizations and a lot of different places. O365 is implemented because somebody wants to replace on-prem Exchange. They're sick of managing Exchange servers. They want to migrate users to the cloud. First cab off the rank is always Exchange. Everyone migrates up there. Next thing is people go, okay, well, if we've paying for Exchange Online, we're paying for M365, why are we not using SharePoint Online? Why are we still paying for SharePoint cows? And so SharePoint effectively just get lifted and shifted across. And then a very common thing that's happened recently is COVID happened. And all of a sudden, these users that already had licenses and already had these tools available to them because their E3 license has been turned on, and somebody went, why would I not want everyone to have everything? M365 utilization just skyrockets. We're seeing 90 to 95% utilization of M365 across the board. The Microsoft reps are absolutely thrilled because that's what they get measured on. That's what their KPIs are on. So they're all very relaxed at the moment. But suddenly, as the owner and the manager of M365, we're starting to see where some of those cracks start to appear. And sure enough, generally speaking, things start to happen. People start doing things that they probably shouldn't do. Uploading credit card numbers to a form, embedding a finance app inside Power Platform, using Yammer to invite every single external party that they've ever worked with and just sharing all the internal documents. The default set of permissions can be used for evil at times. And unless you have something that's going to step in, manage that, control it, things just go nuts. Now, on the assumption that you've never had any kind of Power Platform governance, control, management, or change management across anything, even still inside your organization, assuming you haven't turned off the Power Platform, chances are 10% of people have discovered and own a Power App. They have created one already. 20% of people in your organization have discovered and probably own a Power Automate flow. And probably about 20% of people have created their own Power BI dashboard or report and are tapping into their own data sources. All of a sudden your help desk is going to start getting support calls saying, hey, look, I'm using the 1943 application and yeah, I clicked on this button and it didn't work. And the help desk goes, what? I've never heard of that before in my life. Sure enough, somebody in the business has developed a Power App and handed it across to somebody else who's added some bells and whistles and handed it across to somebody else who's added a flow behind the scenes. And all of a sudden, just because it's an online system, people assume that there is a level of support that is going to be provided there. It's inside M365. You log on using your corporate account. Of course, this is going to be something that is supported by IT and managed by IT. And so what ends up happening is your Power Platform probably looks something like this. You might have some form of, let's see if I can get the laser pointer, structured corporate apps sitting over here. And sure, they're robust, they're pretty, they look nice, they're all good. But they're drowned out by the weeds. There's 1,000, there's 2,000 apps and flows and other bits and pieces that are going on inside there. Maybe some of your citizen developers, some people out in the business have had this genuine requirement and have managed to solve it by implementing something like this. But again, they're getting choked out by the weeds, by the million different components that are sitting inside there. Maybe when M365 first rolled out, you were trying to apply some level of governance. You went, we'll create a variety of environments and whatnot. But then budgets moved on, time moved on, COVID happened. And even the old governance strategy is probably starting to get a bit lost in the weeds over here. And probably most important is this one over here. Nobody really knows what's happening. There could be stuff going on in your Power Platform that really shouldn't be going on, but there's no visibility. It's almost impossible to actually see everything that's happening inside the Power Platform using just the tools that you're provided out of the box by Microsoft. So what's the problem with that? Who cares if there's a million different applications floating around the place and not really doing what they should do? And I've got to draw attention to a couple of applications that I have had experience with in the past, and I'm sure that everyone's going to have a similar experience. Pete's comment in chat, 100%, 100%. The same scenario played out when SharePoint was introduced in organizations. People installed SharePoint, they gave everyone full control, they allowed everyone to create site collections, and what I like to call the sprawl happened, where within 6 months, you had 5,000 site collections and people had managed metadata stores that were invoking, hierarchies that 7 people had created in different locations. It's the same chaos you've seen in SharePoint. It's the same chaos we saw in Access 97 and probably a few subsequent ones from there. It's a similar mess that we've seen out of InfoPath form services as well. People are building applications that either should absolutely be building this platform, but aren't getting the support that they need, aren't getting the promotion they need because they are being developed as skunkworks applications. Things that are being developed, but probably just need a little bit of direction and design, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of a hint. Maybe rather than build your Access database as a single flat file that has 7 million records on it, maybe let's have a SQL Server backend. We can help with this. We can, provide solutions. Some things should just never be. Anyone who's been in IT long enough has seen the Excel spreadsheet, the Access spreadsheet, the Access database, the InfoPath form. That should never have existed, should not have been an Access database, should not have been an Excel spreadsheet, should have been something better. The later you catch that, the harder it is to deal with it. Absolutely. Again, Pete with the gold over here. It's like a mushroom farm, right? You don't see anything happening until you start shining a light in the dark, and there are uncontrolled growths everywhere. It's a mess, right? And unless you do curate that, unless you do manage it, you're going to have a bad time. And the scary thing is that a lot of people will probably find that their Power Platform is already out of control. Yes, Gavin, I'm with you on that one. A lot of people will find that their Power Platform is already out of control, and it's just because you haven't lifted the lid that you don't really know what's going on there. Failing to plan is planning to fail, but a bad plan is equally terrible and a lot more expensive. So obviously, we've already established we need a plan. We know that having no plan is just inviting disaster. It's inviting a revisitation of those old SharePoint woes. It's inviting a revisitation of those old Access and InfoPath woes. But you can't just go, great, we'll download the first thing off the internet, we'll roll it out and off we go. You need to make sure that what you're doing is going to make sense for you, for your organization, for your users and everything like that. And as such, I have gone to Van Leeuwen's Green Landscaping, the top 6 things to consider for your garden. And those 6 things are, you must plan your environment, your plant size, your amount of shade that you're going to be getting, the flowering time for the plants, the maintenance those plants require, and what resistance to disease and parasites those plants are going to have. And every single one of them line up pretty much perfectly with how you want to manage your Power Platform. From an environment perspective, you need to work out what actual appetite does your organization have for the Power Platform. Do you already have a low-code application platform that people should be using? Are there any citizen developers out in your organization that are interested in this kind of thing? If not, is there the appetite for these kind of things in the future? How big is your organization? How small is it? What defense requirements, what regulatory requirements? A whole bunch of things that you need to consider to make sure that whatever plan you're going for makes sense in the environment you're going to be placing it. The plant size. Now, you don't want to plan a garden that is going to have these big, beautiful plants if you can't afford to have those big, beautiful plants. By the same token, if you've got a massive garden, you can't just put one little plant over there, one little plant over there, one little plant over there. You need to make sure that you right size whatever governance you've got to make sure that you can not only get it under control today, but that you can get it under control in the future and keep it under control. There's no point investing $1 million in it this year and then for that to fall off the cliff and everyone to say that was a waste of time, because you need that active maintenance. You need it to keep going or it's going to become a huge mess again. The amount of shade. So what coverage, what level of, I'll get to that in just a second, Ben. What amount of existing knowledge and existing capacity does your organization have to be able to leverage the Power Platform and leverage whatever it is that you're using? If you've got a very young maturity organization, you're going to need to provide a lot of coverage, a lot of help, a lot of assistance to be able to get people up to speed. If you've got people with a lot of deep maturity already, then it doesn't actually reduce the conversation at all. It means that you need to make sure that whatever it is you're implementing is going to fit their existing use cases. A lot of these people are going to have critical business applications built in the Power Platform already. And trying to adapt something to make sure that it continues that and doesn't disrupt their business is tricky. It's not an easy thing to fix at all. From a flowering time perspective, how long can you commit to active governance or management? This is very much similar to that environment and plant size point previously. If you can't commit to ongoing maintenance, you need to make sure that you build a governance plan that doesn't require ongoing maintenance, that is low touch, low implementation. I'm always going to encourage kind of as much of a hands-on process as possible, but for some businesses, that's just not feasible. For some people, that the long-term governance and management plan is 0.2 of an FTE long-term. It's tacked on to the end of the person's job description, and that's it. That's fine. That makes sense. And that's workable, assuming that your organization is not too large, but make sure that whatever it is you're planning doesn't require more time than that. Maintenance, what are your support strategies? So partly that comes under that, is it at 0.2 of an FTE? Is it a team of people? But it also includes, how does help desk react to these kind of things? How do you document it in your management platforms? No worries, Harry. How does the whole suite of application support work? If somebody raises a ticket saying, I need help developing a Power Platform, do you have that capability? And is that a service that you're planning on offering? If somebody says, I've written this and I need it rolled out to 10,000 external users, is that something that you're going to be able to support? Is that something you're going to be able to work with ongoing? Or is that something that you realistically should have caught earlier and shut down before it happened? Finally, that resistance to disease and parasites. This is one that's become increasingly relevant in the last week, unfortunately. Cybersecurity risk mitigation. Fortunately, the Power Platform is a platform that is at least using the free tools, not available to external parties, but it does become very easily accessible once you do start to invite guest users in, or if you're ever using especially portal apps inside Power Platform. You need to make sure that you manage this with your cybersecurity teams, that whatever governance you come up with and whatever data loss prevention policies you're developing align tightly with that cybersecurity risk profile that you've built around this. Ben, your question about what are you seeing business premium inclusion changes? Is this talking more around the licensing side of things, moving towards the per app model as opposed to the per user model, or was it something else you were looking at there?
I think that was referring to the Defender for Business comment above.
Right, yes. So I haven't really considered a lot of the integration that it has with the Defender model. Typically speaking, we see the Power Platform not as a data store and as a individual location that needs to be managed from a security perspective. It does from the governance perspective, obviously, but quite often it's the data at rest that we need to be approaching. What that does mean is you need to make sure that whatever connectors you're using through Power Apps, Power Automate, can only tap data sources that are being managed by some form of either cyber, DLP, Defender, similar. Or if there are those exceptions to the rules where you're starting to tap data sources and work through connectors and apps that do a little bit more processing, a little bit more storage across that, make sure that is part of that strategy. Make sure it's part of the Defender strategy. Either it's included as an application that is being actively monitored, or you've got an exemption, or you've dealt with that individually. So a quick point that I wanted to make here is around citizen developers. So especially having come from the access side of things, the Excel side of things, and the InfoPath side of things, the temptation for any IT pro is going to be, do not let end users get their hands on this. That would be an unmitigated disaster. That's how we end up with a mess. That's how we end up with a disaster. In reality, there are going to be elements of your organization, assuming it's of a certain size, that are very IT savvy, that are very tech savvy, have a good grip on not only their business requirements, but the technical ways of implementing that. What you want to be able to do is work with those users for them to be able to solve their own problems. Because, as I mentioned on this slide, they know their business best, and they are going to be able to be the most reactive to their ongoing and evolving business needs as well. It doesn't mean that IT has no role to play, and it doesn't mean we take a step back. We obviously need to be there for planning, education, support, proliferation, and governance. We need to make sure that wherever those apps that are being built do touch on sensitive topics, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's sensitive data, whether it's sharing with external parties, anything like that, that we have those guidelines in place, that we have the policies in place, and that we have the tools in place to identify where those things are happening. But where possible, yeah, absolutely, hand off to your business users. Just make sure you've got that support plan in place so that it doesn't become that burden on your support team. Tiered gardens. So one of the best ways that I have found works really well as far as managing your Power Platform is concerned. And I have to mention that in here, we're talking about Power Platform environments, which unfortunately does exclude Power BI. I'll get to Power BI in just a minute. But generally speaking, you're going to want 3 different tiers of environments inside your Power Platform that people are able to work and operate within. The first tier that I've identified is that sandpit tier. That's the one, if you've just turned it on and let everyone go, that is your default environment. Everything is a sandpit at the moment, but it doesn't have any of the restrictions that I'm suggesting inside here. It's got less rules around what you can do. So you don't need to go through approval. You don't need to go through change management. You don't need to go through IT assessment before you develop anything in there. But the capacity to actually deliver anything is severely restricted. So you can use a variety of tools that I'm going to mention later on in this presentation to lock down what people are able to do inside that sandpit tier. But because you've locked them down to only using those tools and those connectors that you know are safe and you know are above board, and then you implement things like the limitation on sharing, you implement capacity management on top of that, it becomes a safe place for people to play. And this becomes, more than anything else, an environment where people can get in and learn what the platform is capable of doing and identify that, hey, look, I want to take this further. I want to evolve this into that second tier or that third tier of application. The second tier that I've just called the responsible citizen developer tier at the moment has significantly fewer restrictions on it than the sandpit tier would have. The DLP that you'd have over the top of that would be a lot more relaxed. You'd certainly have a lot more of those connectors available, but there would be design and support guidelines on top of that. The idea being that in the sandpit tier, you develop an app, you come to IT for support, they're going to say, no, sorry, that's sandpit. We don't support sandpit. That is bottom tier as far as priority is concerned. If you want that to be supported, you need to elevate it to at least that responsible citizen developer tier, and that involves going through design guidelines and at least comprehending and acknowledging those support guidelines as well. You can have a managed dataverse around this, and when I say metadata collection, this is around you want to be auditing the content that is in there, the different components you have inside that Power Platform, and making sure you collect additional information about each of the assets within there. There is simply not enough information in the Power Platform by default to be able to responsibly manage the Power Platform. And the interfaces that Microsoft provide, honestly, not great. Very, very difficult to actually understand the full scope of what you've got in there and to provide any level of ongoing management. In here, they want to be some level of application lifecycle maintenance. Obviously, if you're looking at providing some level of assurance to users, saying that they will be able to use this as an ongoing application and IT will support it, you can't just have that application randomly crashing because somebody wanted to change the icon or somebody prefers red to blue. You need to make sure that there are some guidelines around there, but that your users are supported in doing so as well. Pete makes a fantastic example here, I've forgotten the word. He makes a very good point, sorry. If you fail to provide that sandpit tier, if you fail to provide a platform for people to be able to get in here, all you're doing is breeding shadow IT. And 100%, kudos for extending the metaphor there. They will find an external provider who'll do it without your knowing. You'll get the cross-pollination and you'll get a whole bunch of unexpected stuff going on. At least if you provide them this platform and provide a level of oversight to it and do it within the garden of an IT managed platform, you know that whatever's happening is something you can audit, you can shut down if you need to. The benefit of the sandpit tier is you can still get your administrators to go in, analyze what's happening, where it's happening, who it's being shared with, and move from there. Back to the responsible citizen developer level. So you want to provide some level of education to those users as well. You want to be able to teach them what the right thing to do is, what not the right thing to do is. Quite often, a lot of this is around, sure, you can do this inside the Power Platform, but you should be doing this in Chris 21 or in SAP or as a custom web application or as something else. It's about identifying those functions that are either already being developed somewhere, delivered somewhere else, or can only be managed through specific environments, and making sure that they're well aware of that as they go. You'll probably need multiple environments to be able to deliver that responsible citizen developer tier, because the way that licensing works inside the Power Platform is, especially if you're going down the per app license model, you assign the license to the environment. And if you've got a large number of developers in there that are just effectively vying for control and hoping to be able to get on those tasty premium connectors, that'll get snapped up before you have an opportunity to actually properly assign it to the individual app that you're looking for. So depending on what types of connectors people have access to, the types of licenses that people need, and even the types of data, if you've got a dataverse that has access to some sensitive data or some data that belongs to individual organizational units, you'll probably need a separate environment for each one of those. The final tier that I'd be looking at inside here is the concept of the IT-owned apps. Now, the difference here is that while the responsible citizen developers is all born straight from the business, they develop it, they still practically own it, but IT support it. On the IT-owned application side of things, this is the ones that, as an IT organization, we're building, we're owning, we're managing. Obviously, one benefit of this is we have the full gamut of tools because we have our own internal processes that we can make sure we're not doing anything we shouldn't be doing. We don't invite citizen developers in here, but it means that we can have things like a full application lifecycle. This is where you would start to do things like integration with your Azure DevOps tooling. This is where you'd have full software development lifecycle, including probably tiered environments for each of your different solutions. This is also where if you get a third-party application, and we're starting to see more and more of those in the market that are being delivered as a Power Platform solution, this is where you would be able to install it in this tier of stuff. Again, we're not talking about a single environment. We're probably talking about even up to one environment per app. And one of the examples that I'll be working through soon is a tool called the Center of Excellence Toolkit from Microsoft. You would want that to be in a dedicated environment. I've found that creating an environment just called governance and using that as a home for all of your different Power Platform governance components works really well, but your mileage may vary. I would certainly look at least having it in its own environment, whether it's a dedicated environment or one dedicated to all governance, really up to you. So what tools do we have? How can we actually do all of this? The Power Platform Admin Center is average at best. Even doing something simple like give me a list of all the Power Apps or show me the Power Apps that Mike Redden owns, almost impossible to do straight out of the Power Platform Admin Center. I have no doubt Microsoft are planning to improve it. I really hope they are, but for now, we cannot depend on the Power Platform Admin Center to actually manage at the app level. It's good at managing at the environment level. You can manage capacity, you can manage policies, you can manage users, you can do a whole bunch of stuff there, but it doesn't work when you get down to the weeds, as I mentioned before. Power BI, I have no idea about. I am not a Power BI expert, unfortunately. It looks like an amazing set of tools, but it's probably best left to the Power BI experts. Now, I know that Andrew mentioned at the beginning of this chat, there is a Power BI user group. I'd highly recommend going along to that, seeing what they have to say and managing it through that. Unfortunately, almost everything that I'm working through here when I'm talking about environments and apps and integrations and connectors and DLP, all of that applies to Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. It does not, unfortunately, apply to Power BI. PowerShell. I'm going to get sick of saying the word power eventually. PowerShell is a fantastic tool. If you're not across PowerShell at the moment, I highly recommend jumping into it. It can be very intimidating to start with, but fortunately, Microsoft have done very, very well as far as their commandlet naming convention is concerned. So it'll take you a few hours to kind of get the hang of it if you're used to scripting already. Once you are in, everything just opens up and it all becomes incredibly intuitive, incredibly quickly. The PowerShell for managing Power Platform is a lot better than the Power Platform Admin Center. It is unfortunately still not extensible, so you can't add you can't add properties to the Power Platform. You can't then use that to query or report or analyze or anything like that. But you can do a whole bunch of stuff that is actually not even possible through the user interface. Not only can you get a list of all of the Power Apps, you can filter it, you can sort it, you can change owners, you can add owners, you can change connection properties. There's a huge amount of stuff you can do in there. Unfortunately, realistically, until you actually have those reports and those analysis tools and are able to extend them to include the metadata that you're collecting yourself across that Power Platform, you don't really know what to do. If you're in a situation where you've got hundreds or thousands of Power Apps and Power Automate, just finding what you need to do and where you need to do it, very, very difficult. And that's where the Center of Excellence Toolkit comes in. So very importantly, the Center of Excellence is a starter kit. It is not an end-to-end solution. It is not a, next, done. We're doing governance. It provides a set of Tools and utilities that effectively does what I've mentioned before as being that huge shortcoming. It audits everything that happens inside your Power Platform, excluding Power BI. It gets you a list of every Power App, every flow, every execution of that Power App, every execution of the flow, all the connectors that they're using. It puts them all into a Dataverse table and then provides a bunch of out-of-the-box not reporting services, sorry, Power BI reports over the top of all of that content. It is very, very good, but all it does is shows you how big your problem is. It doesn't solve any of your problems. So where you go from there is you need to be able to extend the Center of Excellence toolkit, and it is extensible. The components that you give come as a managed solution, so you can't immediately change them, but it's in a Dataverse table. That Dataverse table is available to the entire environment, so you can extend that, you can build on it as much as you need to. But that's a very, very strong recommend. Get the COE toolkit in, even if for nothing else, just to understand the scope of the problem that you may have, to understand what apps you've got, how they interact with each other, how many times they're being executed, how many times they're being shared. But as I mentioned here, put it in a separate environment. Don't try to put it in your default environment. Just the very nature of listing out every one of the Power BI report, Power apps and Power Automates that you've got and sticking them in a Dataverse table is probably more information than you want to be sharing with most of your users. And as I mentioned before, you want that Dataverse to be a freely accessible toolkit to the users of that environment. It's a powerful tool. You don't want to lock it away unless you absolutely have to. So what can you build yourself on top of all of that? And a lot of this is based on the concepts that are provided inside the Center of Excellence Toolkit. The Center of Excellence Toolkit is in itself a Power Platform solution. It is a bunch of flows, it's a bunch of Power Apps, it's a bunch of Power BI reports. But effectively, the way that you would then even extend on top of that is you use Power Apps to actually do that data interaction with your users. Use Power Automate to audit what is happening, whether that's inside your existing organization, whether it's hitting your ServiceNow instance and getting a list of all the tickets that are associated with things, whether it's even sending emails out to work out additional data that needs to be collected. Audit, process, and orchestrate through Power Automate, but get everything to populate that Dataverse table that I mentioned before. The Dataverse is pretty awesome. It's a CRM database behind the scenes, so that has its pros and cons, as I'm sure many of you would be aware. It's not particularly performant, certainly not as scalable as like an Azure RDS or just an on-premises SQL server, but it will do with what we're working with here. I found it to be pretty acceptable and very extensible, very user-friendly, especially when it comes to the Power Apps and Power Automate. Power BI is a fantastic tool, as I mentioned before. It's all black magic as far as I'm concerned, but when you get it the right witch or wizard to put that black magic in place, it develops some really, really amazing things, and it integrates very nicely with the Dataverse as well. So using the Power BI to report on what you've got and at least provide some analytics over the top, fantastic. Power Virtual Agents are still very new. A lot of people are still afraid of them. A lot of users still don't want to talk to a chatbot. As far as they're concerned, chatbots are useless and a hindrance to everything. So obviously your mileage may vary here, but it does provide an opportunity to interact with your users. What I'm talking about there is if you've got, say, 1,000 Power Apps and you want to provide a business classification for each of those Power Apps, like are they business critical? Does it include finance data? Does it include anything like this? You could potentially have a virtual agent engage with your external parties en masse and say, hey, provide us some information about this, and that would then go back and populate your Dataverse, just to make sure that all of that information is there and available. DLP policies. Now this one actually surprised me. When I first discovered that DLP is what's used to manage this, I wasn't sure what it was all about. It does kind of make sense. The concept here is that data loss prevention policies, which is typically something managed either by your cyber team or a team adjacent to that, is the one that's responsible for identifying and restricting what connectors each environment are able to use. And because it is done at the per environment level, typically, you need to make sure that you split those environments out and say, okay, cool, the sandpit environment, very restrictive. That's on a whitelist system. Nothing is permitted except integrating with SharePoint, integrating with Mail, integrating with Outlook. You know, you work that out yourself and put it inside there. As you move down those tiers, it's your DLP that gets to define, okay, we're going to allow these people under these circumstances to do this, but we want to report on it, we want to audit it, we want to know when these type of things happen. Finally, as I mentioned before, once you have done all of the reporting, all the data collection, and all of the metadata management, use PowerShell to effect change. Even if the output is it effectively spits out a bunch of PowerShell for you to execute, that is still the fastest way to do it. Trying to go through Power Automate to effect change, or trying to do it through any kind of the APIs, I've found can work, but they're still very much in flux at the moment. And it's certainly not as performant. If you want to make big changes across the board, PowerShell is still probably your number one friend there. If you build it, they will come. Field of dreams. Completely wrong. Completely false. Not even remotely true. If it was remotely true, change managers would be out of a job like that. There is no system in the world. If you build the most amazing platform in the world, but you don't communicate it, you don't push it, you don't educate your users, you just go live with it, nobody will come. And those that do come will probably complain that it's not how it was in the previous organization, or a variety of different things. You need to manage the change around this. You need to make sure that your users out in the business are aware, what is the Power Platform? How does it work? What can it do for me? What can I do with it? Just building it and going, patting yourself on the back because you've had a whole bunch of conversations internal to IT, you'll get nothing. You'll get nothing. So what could go wrong with all of this? These are kind of your typical things that are going to slow you down, are going to cause you issues while you're going through this implementation. So a significant existing landscape, which chances are most people are already in. You need to decide, what are you going to do with all of that? Do you migrate it to your new governance strategy? Do you archive most of it and hope that people get in touch with you? Do you just ignore it and effectively just seek, like carve it off and be like, okay, everything over there that's no man's land. We're not going to touch it. I'm not going to tell you exactly which one to do, but you need to consider what you're going to do with that existing landscape. This is why getting the COE tool installed before trying to plan your governance strategy is going to be important, because just knowing how big the problem is important to start with. Engaging with support, as I mentioned before. What happens when something goes wrong? What if a Power Platform, Power App stops working? What if a flow gets suspended because it's been executing too many actions? You need to work with your support desk. You need to work with your help desk. You need to work with your entire support team to make sure that not only are the most common things identified, are well communicated and understood by those that are going to be answering the phones, but who do you escalate to? What capacity do they have to deal with those support calls? Engage with architecture. Please, people, engage with architecture. Yes, I know that this is mostly kind of your small scale stuff. This is going to be applications that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, architecture deals with the multi-million-dollar stuff. We're dealing with small case stuff here. You want to make sure that Power Platform, even if it's just one little dot, appears on that architecture diagram. You want to make sure that people are aware of it and that it is part of the decision-making process for some of those bigger systems, because more and more often, these big platforms cost multi-million dollars to perform even the most simple and tiniest of changes. But if you could potentially have a Power Platform application, whether it's an Automate or a app or even a chatbot or something like that, that does a little bit of stuff and then pushes that data back into that core platform, that might be a fantastic solution for some people inside your business. Of course, if architecture aren't even aware that the Power Platform exists, they're never going to allow that infiltration or exfiltration of data. They need to be aware of it. They need to have some concept of what it is and how it works before they're going to be able to properly commit to supporting it in the way it should be supported. Executive buy-in. If you don't have some level of top-down support, top-down coverage for the Power Platform, at some point somebody's going to raise a flag and say, oh, well, why don't we just write everything as a .NET application? Or why don't we just use Access databases? Everyone knows how to write an Access database. We should just use Access instead. If you haven't got that executive support, if you haven't got that top-down support, you're doomed to fail. This one's not unique to Power Platform governance. This one is true of every IT project ever. Make sure you've got that top-down support. You want to make sure that part of that is obviously the education capability. What budget do we have and what capacity do we have to go to the business and say, hey, this is what the platform is. This is what we use it for. Come have a look. You want to make sure that whatever ongoing support is going to be required has been considered by the executive team as well. If there is going to be a team of people that needs to support this, make sure that that team is right-sized. Finally, if there are any competing products, I'm actually of the opinion that there's no true competing products to the Power Platform. Where it sits in the market is fairly unique, but there are a lot of products that are quite adjacent to it, especially in M365. You've got things like Nintex Workflow and Nintex Forms. If you've got a SAP installation, Fiori sits adjacent to it. And of course, you have still got things like Access databases, Excel spreadsheets, InfoPath forms, all of those different components as well. You want to make sure that all of those have been considered and that there is at least a response. If somebody says, hey, I want to do blah, should I be doing this as a Fiori app or as a Power app? Finally, the business buy-in. And this is mostly about that change management side of things, especially when it comes to that migrate, archive, or ignore question that I posed at the top of the page. And I'm sure everyone who's ever been part of a implementation that requires decommissioning of anything, as soon as you go out to your business users, they will pick the option that results in the least effort for them. And typically, if you make it that available to them, it will be the leave everything as it is and don't talk to me ever again. You need to make sure that if you are planning on cleaning up, if you are planning on having a managed and manageable platform, that saying do nothing is the hardest option. There are a number of tools inside the Center of Excellence Toolkit that help you identify which apps are being used, how much are they being used, who's using them, and it actually even provides an archive score on a lot of those things. So potentially even look at targeting those that have the worst archive score, and instead of getting users to justify why they should be deleted, or if they can be deleted, get users to justify why they should continue to exist. Have the default situation be, if you can't justify this, or if you can't even be bothered providing an answer, we're just going to archive it and delete it, and then you'll never have, you'll need to raise a ticket if you want to get this back again. The biggest problem of all is that bottom step, shadow IT if you get it wrong. This is exactly what I think it was Pete Calvert was saying earlier. If you get too restrictive, if you lock people out, if you don't let them do things, all you're going to do is breed a different garden in a different location. And that would be like, yeah, it's a disaster. I'm sure I don't need to talk to the people in this chat here about the problems with shadow IT. And the way that you solve shadow IT is not with a stick, it's with a carrot. Make sure they have plenty of room to plant their carrots. So again, the pitfalls, things that might result in that kind of explosion in shadow IT. Restricting citizen developers. Don't stop people from doing what they want to do, just make sure that they're doing it the right way instead. Trying to put everything in a single environment, it just becomes a huge, gigantic mess and becomes impossible to maintain. And effectively, new environments will spin up organically over time. If you don't have a strategy for it, that becomes yet another unmanaged, chaotic mess. Security by obscurity. Assume that there's at least one person in the business smarter and more motivated than you are. If they really want to hide that there are credit card numbers, they'll split it over 2 fields. If they really want to provide bulk customer information, they'll tell people to take a photo of it and upload the photo instead of uploading the actual data because their DLP policy says that they can't upload the data. Make sure that you've got some level of control, and that again, you're not just locking people out for the sake of locking people out, that you identify when people have these needs, even if those needs are potentially contrary to cybersecurity and overarching governance, identify them, work with the users on how can we develop a solution. Sometimes that might mean moving towards an enterprise app. Sometimes it might mean working with that organization, with that user to develop a custom application. Sometimes it might mean finding an exemption to the rule. And the last one is plan to implement this in 2025. People go, oh yes, Mike's making a lot of really good points here. We'll put this on the schedule for next budget period, after the next budget period, when we've got some time and capacity to work on this. Every day you move on and don't start looking at this and don't start dealing with this as a problem, the problems will increase. The unchecked growth will cause more issues every single day. The migration and retrospective effort increases exponentially. And of course, the user and IT impression of the Power Platform will suffer. That also translates in the end to business users' impression of IT will suffer. People start going, oh, bloody IT, they've given us this M365 thing and they can't even be bothered supporting the Power Platform. What the hell? You need to get in front of this. Need to make sure that you're on top of it. Finally, what is it that we should be educating? What governance should we be applying to this platform purely from a governing perspective, not from a kind of architectural perspective? You want to make sure that people are aware of what the platform is capable of. quite often users will have seen a Power App or a Flow or a Power Automate, virtual agent, or even a Power BI report, and pigeonhole their entire thinking into that's all it can do. I once received an email from Power Automate, therefore Power Automate sends emails. That's it. Make sure that you've got that education out there so that people can be aware, yes, it can send emails, but it can also do all these other awesome things. Obviously, you want to tag that with, yes, it can do all these awesome things, but if you want to do these things, come have a chat, because, you know, integrating in with our line of business data, engaging with external parties, all these different components that are kind of on that sensitive side of your business, you want to make sure there's that conversation with IT so that that ongoing governance can happen. And that leads into that, how do you get help from IT? What is that escalation point? What can they do themselves? What should they do themselves? How do they take that next step? When it comes to those second and third tier environments that I mentioned previously, you want to make sure that there are some common design patterns as well. Just a few, just off the top of my head, things like using flows for data access rather than trying to do it directly through Power Apps. Obviously not applicable all the time. If you can just go directly through your Power App, it can work quite nicely, but there is the option to use Flow as well. That gives you the ability to do things like a dedicated service account for doing your data access, having long-running data operations, having secure data, a whole bunch of stuff you can't do through Power Apps by itself. And that a lot of people will go, oh, well, if I can't secure my data through Power Apps, if I need to give people access to the backend data to be able to use it through Power Apps is useless. I need to go write something. Not the case. Have that whole flow behind a Power App design pattern in place. Orchestrator flows. Don't try to put absolutely everything, all of your logic into a single flow. If you can break it down, if you can have kind of simultaneous running operations, if you can split it out in any way, shape, or form, do it. Make sure you have that single flow that kind of orchestrates all the other flows and invoke them all individually. It also provides a level of error management that is otherwise sorely lacking. Save message received. Sorry, I thought I heard someone. Component design. Something that's not immediately obvious inside Power Apps in particular is the ability to develop those reusable components and reuse them across a bunch of different screens, definitely within the single Power App, but even potentially bringing that into a managed library of common components you can use across different Power Apps. Finally, having some level of consistent user experience for those, not just for Power Apps, but also through Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. With you receive an email, just making sure that it's got things like a ID that represents the flow that the email was sent from, having a standard template, a standard set of assets, and a standard design setup, so that if somebody jumps in and starts using a brand new Power App, they at least have some level of intuitive understanding as to how that Power App should work, because it's consistent with all the other Power Apps that are used across your organization. That's all I've got for now. Well aware I've gone fairly broad across a lot of different topics there, and I do have a habit of talking quite quickly. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, thoughts, comments, please turn your camera on, open your mic, and let's hear it.
That wasn't fast talking.
All good? All right. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks,
apologies, Mike, for distracting you with the chats.
No, not at all. Not at all. I appreciated the running commentary. It was good.
All right, so if there's no questions, I'll end the recording now.